Hi, my name is Christopher Kaibe, and I work at the German Research Center for Geosciences together with my colleague Nona Schulte-Römer. And in this video, we're going to explain to you how to use the Nachtlichter app in order to count lights outdoors at nighttime. So in the app, we go outdoors in public places and count up all the different light sources we can see. And so your first question might be why we want to do that. And we're going to explain that in just a moment. I'll first tell you a little bit about why we're doing the project. Then Nona will explain to you how to get the app and how to log in and use it. And at the end, we'll talk a little bit about how to deal with cases where it's not so clear which category a light belongs. And at the very end, how to join a campaign or start your own. So first off, Nachtlichter is part of a larger project that's funded from the German Helmholtz Association called Nachtlicht-BÜHNE. And in Nachtlicht-BÜHNE, we're producing two citizen science apps. They are co-designed. That means that citizen scientists have been together with us from the very, very start in producing these apps. Our colleagues from DLR are making an app together with citizen scientists about fireballs. These are very bright shooting stars that you can even see during the daytime. You'll be able to use their app to report them. And our app is about counting lights. So we want to go out on the street and count up all the different lights that we can see and record which types. So why in the world would anybody want to do this? Well, I'm interested in it because I study nighttime satellite imagery, and I want to better be able to understand what makes up these night lights. But most of you out there are not working with satellite data most of the time, so most participants come from a different reason why they're interested in studying lights at night. One of them, for example, is that light has big impacts on ecosystems. So we see here an example from the UK where a big LED sign is shining onto a tree from the right-hand side. And you see that the leaves that are closest to the tree, they hang on latest. Now, not every kind of tree does this, but there are a lot of urban trees that are very sensitive to light and will get their leaves much earlier in the spring and hold on to them much later in the winter when they have light shining on them. This is another stressor for trees that are already in urban areas under a lot of stress from things like not having enough water or having a lot of dust. Lights also have really profound impact on animals. So here you see an example from New York City in the Tribute in Light, where in some years, especially if there's bad weather, thousands of birds will assemble at the lights, and they become so many birds that if you didn't turn the lights off, they would start to collide into each other and fall injured to the ground, where many of them would die. Thankfully, this has been recognized as a large problem, and these days they would never attract so many birds because when they start to notice that they're attracting birds, they turn the lights off and the birds start to fly away. And then when they turn the lights back on again, they assemble again, but by turning the lights off, they can minimize a massive bird death of migratory birds. So you can see that light can have really huge impacts on individual animals and plants. But producing all of this light actually has a lot of costs associated with it. So in terms of just monetary costs, we spend about 75 billion euros for light worldwide. So this isn't just for the energy, this is the energy plus the installation plus the maintenance. And this number includes both public and private lighting. So we pay for that, right? We pay for that either as taxpayers for the public lighting, or we pay as customers for the private lighting, or you pay for your own lights in your own yard. Artificial light outdoors takes up about 3% of global electricity. That might not sound like much at the start, but you have to remember that the demand for electricity is much smaller at night. These lights are only on at night, so their fraction of the total nighttime energy is much higher. And if we want to better match the supply and demand of energy, for example, with solar power as part of this Energiewende, the transition to sustainable electricity, it's very helpful if we can reduce the amount of energy we need for outdoor lighting, because that provides us capacity then, for example, to charge up electric cars or do other sort of energy storage things. Yeah, so coming back though, just to the satellite picture and why I'm interested in this project, we want to understand what makes up these different light sources. So when we look, for example, at Dresden with this false color image, and we look at the radiance of how bright an area is, right? We see that it has in the Altstadt in Dresden, 84 nanowatts per centimeter squared per steradian. And that number doesn't mean anything to anyone, right? Is that 100 lights or 100,000, right? What does that mean? And we can also see that in the Neustadt in Dresden, close by, it's about 1/4 as bright. But why is that, right? Are there fewer streetlights there, or are they less bright, or are there bigger or brighter advertisements in the Altstadt, right? What is the difference between these two places? That's the kind of question that we're trying to answer with this project. So we need people to go out and look at the different light sources that there are. When you look at a city at night from an airplane, you might get the impression at first that, well, it's all streetlights, right? You see these streets, and so you think, well, okay, basically the only thing that's out there is streetlights, so the city could just give us the list of where all the streetlights are, and then we know, right? But if you look from a different angle, you get a different perspective, and you can see, for example, here is an enormous building. It has an advertisement that's the size of a whole high-rise building, and it's much brighter, that whole surface, than the street areas. And similarly, these lit facades here and over here are much, much brighter actually than the street areas. And so our first glimpse from directly above does not necessarily tell us what we see when the satellites look from other angles, or how these lights contribute to the environmental impacts of light pollution or making the sky brighter. So we want people to go out and count up all the different light sources you can see. Let us know what you see, which direction the lights are shining, and which types they are, and what color they are. So now we're going to pass over to Nona so that she can explain how you get the app and how you make observations with it.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, the app is actually our data collection tool that allows us to register, to document all these different light sources that Chris just mentioned. And so one of the major challenges in this process was in the process of app development, which was a co-design process with a wonderful team of citizen scientists from Germany, was that we had to find categories for these different light sources, and we also had to find descriptions and measures to describe the different characteristics. So before you can actually use the app, we really recommend you to do this tutorial. In fact, it's mandatory because you cannot register with the app. But it's also fun, and that's a good thing, because we had a wonderful team of students in the United States who created this tutorial for us, and they inserted little quizzes that allow you to check whether you have understood the categories. And once you have done the tutorial, you will understand how to count lights with our app, and you will also feel much more secure in using the app. We're quite sure of that. And one of the really important points is that you have to do the tutorial to the very end, because at the end of the tutorial, you not only get to see a surprise picture as a little reward, but you also get a passcode that will enable you to not only come back to the tutorial, here, I'm returning, but you also need this passcode to register with the app, as I've already said. Well, obviously, I'm not going to show you the passcode here because you're supposed to do the tutorial first, but I will nevertheless give you a glimpse of what is shown in the tutorial. So I've already mentioned that we've had to find categories that are comprehensible and easy to understand, and also measures. For example, if we look at windows, private windows, office windows, they have very different sizes. So we didn't want you to guess, oh, is it 2 meters or 5 meters or 2 square meters or 7? Instead, we just used the human measure. We recommend that you imagine how many people can stand in front of a window. And this is the measure we use in order to count windows, for example, window planes. So in that case, for private windows, we have one unit is about 1 person that can stand in front of the window. That equals about 2 square meters. You can also have half people, like one square meter windows, and then you can count them together. So 2 halves give 1 window in total. And so that's the way we count windows, just to give you an example. So if you have any questions, things have elapsed your mind or whatever, you want to come back to the tutorial, you can do that by inserting this passcode, and then you can just go back to the different categories and check them out again. You can also just go back to the description of color, of brightness. Using this menu button, you always get back to the main menu. So I think this tutorial is quite straightforward, and it will enable you to use this wonderful app that we have the pleasure of using now. So if you're using the app for the first time, you probably get to this screen here. Once you get here, the most important thing is first to register. So you can do that here. Account. You click on account. And then if you haven't got an account yet, you just click on this here. And this will ask you to insert your name, your username. And this is important because the username is the name under which your observation will be published online. And since we're following the principles of good scientific practice, this will be open access, and it's also paid by taxpayers. So we are really trying to make our data as accessible as possible for other researchers and also for people who can use them for whatever they want to do, political activities and so on. If you insert and choose your username, it is important that you keep that in mind. This username will be public and online in connection with your data. And that means that it will not only show how many streets you've counted, but also it will show where you have counted and at what time. So if you want to hide this from the public eye, please use a pseudonym, like just make up a name. That's totally fine. Please insert your real email address because you have to confirm the link that Correo, the provider of this service, will send you. And please create your own password to access your account. And here is the place where you have to insert the tutorial passcode that is mandatory. And optional is here that we can contact you in case we have any questions regarding your data. So I already have an account, so I just sign in here with my account. And you can see here how many lights I've already counted. And just to encourage you a bit, this was done within 45 minutes. And I did 2 transects and it was fun because it goes quite quick, as I will show you now. So if you want to count lights, just go to home. And then you need to make sure that you're in the right location, because one important point about the app is if you're in a campaign area, if you're counting as part of a local campaign as the one here in Dresden, you need to be within 50 meters away from one of the transects you want to choose. So in order to count one of these, as we call them, transects, you just click on one and then you can count the lights. In my case, I'm more than 50 meters away from these predefined transects, so I have to create my own in order to show you how it works. So I click on define an entirely new transect. If you live in the campaign areas, we really encourage you to be part of this campaign and help us create a complete data set of the predefined areas, because this is what will help Chris most to analyze his satellite data and do the ground truthing with your data. So use a transect if you are in a campaign area and define your entirely new one. So this is what I'm doing now because I'm a bit away from this campaign area. So you have to explain that you understood how to create a transect. I already know that. So now this flag shows where I am and where I will start. Now I start counting lights. So this goes like, I just click on the little lamp and the plus. And here I have our wonderful categories that we have developed together with the citizen scientists and that we have tested already. And we hope that you will immediately understand what we mean by it. So, for example, if you want to count streetlights, most of them are partly shielded, many are white, many are normal. I just click these characteristics, and then I can count. I see 2 from my position, so done. Oh, but I also see there are bollards. They are globe style, and they are kind of colorful, and they are dim. So I see 5, done. And then I also see private windows, and they are another color, and they are also dim. Done. Oh, actually, I forgot. There are more private windows. Now I'm walking down the street, and I just switch between map view and list view. And while I'm doing this, I can just add more private windows. And oh, there's another bollard, and there's another streetlight. So this is the list view really enables you to move forward quite quickly once you have categorized all the lights in a street. And you can always add a new one. So we really like this function. So in the end, once you've finished your own transect, you click on this pin here, and it will ask you, I want to finish it now because I don't want to send my data, but this is what happens in the end. You send your data and we ask you a few more questions. How many cars did you see and so on? But we think this is quite straightforward and we don't have to explain it to you. So one more thing I want to show you, which is important. If you are located in a campaign area, make sure that you have a look at the transects before you start. Because some of the transects, they behave strangely, let's say. So they might go in a U-shape or like this. So once you're counting in your list view, you might not pay attention to where you're going and where the end of the transect is. So it's really useful to know upfront where you're actually going and where the transect ends, because we had cases where people just went on and maybe this is a little street, but it continues around here. So make sure that you only count what is blue and do not just keep on, that you do not keep moving and count too much. And the other thing that we would kindly ask you to do is, if you're counting in an area that is open and where you can see lights from different angles, for example, here, you might see lights that are in this area from this street, and you might also see it from this transect. So if you have time, enough time, just do the 2 transects as it has been done here. Yellow marks the transects that have already been counted. And then you are the one who does both and knows which lights have already been counted and which haven't. And one more thing, it's more helpful for us if you first do all the blue transects, because that makes sure that we have the data that we need. But you're very welcome to do the yellow transects twice or 3 times or even more often, because that will also increase the data quality. If you have any problems with the app, just have a look at our frequently asked questions. So you can access this sheet here. This is on our website, Nachtlicht-BÜHNE, English section. And in this document, FAQs, you also find a link to a form where you can submit problems with the app that are not solved. And there you can give us more information about how we can reproduce this error. And if you have any further questions and technical issues to solve, don't hesitate to contact Chris or me. You find our addresses here. And with that, I give over to Chris. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nona. So as the last case, I want to talk about a few cases where it might be tricky, right, to categorize what the light is. So here's an example from Potsdam where we have a parking lot that has these lights inside of the parking lot, and they might go kind of deep. So you might be wondering, so should I call that a canopy light because it's under a ceiling? Or, you know, what do I do? And the idea is approach it in sort of a sensible way that anyone would agree with. So there might be multiple ways that you could classify this. So one would be to say, okay, I see here these 1, 2, 3, 4 canopy lights. And so I say there's 4 canopy lights. But you could also say, well, it kind of has the effect as if it's sort of an illuminated facade. So you could just choose illuminated facade. Here's another example that's quite similar, where you have lights that could be considered canopy lights, but on the other hand, they're hanging kind of low. So maybe you would say they're lights on a building that are partially shielded. Some of the light can go up into the sky. Another example here where a car can drive through a wall sort of into the backyard of a house. So here you could also call this a canopy light. It would be reasonable because it's kind of illuminating the ceiling. Or you could say, well, it's about the size and shape of a commercial window, so I could call it a commercial window, right? It's not really a commercial window, but it's about, it has a similar feel. Or you could say maybe this is the size of about 3 or 4 private windows and say it has the effect sort of a private window.
One more note, don't be shy. Counting data is always better than not counting. So if you have any doubts regarding the correctness of your categorization, don't worry. We're happy if you count and just do your best.
And so with that, we're through, and we're really looking forward to you having the opportunity to try out the app. We want you always to do it safely as a team of at least 2 people. Often what works really well is one person uses the app and the other person looks for the different lights and makes sure that, you know, you don't get distracted and stand in a bike lane or something like that. So one person is kind of looking out for the other. So one last statement, because this is the English version, many of you watching this might live in an area where there is no campaign. And you can design your own campaign. We're going to be putting a document on our webpage that explains how to do that. You're welcome just to try the app out and do a single street in front of your house, but we won't be able to compare that to the satellite data because we need to cover sort of fairly larger areas. They'll typically take, depending where you live, between 3 to 10 hours. So if you're up for doing a little bit more work and trying to cover sort of this 3 hours, or if you're in the center of a city, maybe 10 hours of covering an area, maybe together with your neighbors, then check out our document. It'll explain how you can make sure that you line things up so that it matches up with the pixels on the satellite map. So thank you to you for watching. Thank you to our citizen scientists who helped us develop this program, and we're looking forward to seeing your data.
Thank you.